Okay, so today patch 3.0 hit, and with it we've got a bunch of interesting changes to cards. I want to go through these changes and let you know what my thoughts are on what decks are going to get better, what decks are going to be worse, and how impactful these changes really are. First up, we have Scion. Base stats change from 3/6 to 1/6. I think this was good. Scion was a card design I'm not particularly a fan of, and I always call these, they're like card checks. Like Scion comes down on turn 7 and it's like, do you have one of these cards which can deal with him? If not, he just instantly wins the game. It was a bit too strong because he could just instantly win this game. This hurts that consistency a little bit. Probably doesn't hit the deck too hard, as usually a lot of the time Scion's attack is overkill, and if he gets an attack through anyway, he's going to win. But definitely will hurt the deck a bit, and we'll see Draven Scion hurt quite a bit because of that. Ash, you frostbitten 5+ enemies, you frostbitten 4+ enemies. This is a nice change. It's not a major buff. I don't think Ash needed a major buff. She levels up a bit more easily. The Ash LeBlanc package in a mid-range deck is really, really strong. And we've got things like Pantheon and Dragons running around at the moment. So Ash LeBlanc is really good into that sort of deck anyway. Next, we've got Trundle, changed 4/5 to 4/6 and leveled up, has gone up by 1 health as well. Not a big deal. I don't think this is that impactful. Really, it's nice for Trundle. Trundle having 6 health is always good. He used to be 5/6 and he was absolutely insane at 5/6. 4/6 is probably a good intermediate. I don't think this is going to make him a lot stronger. It doesn't hurt. The Anivia change, this is a big change for Anivia actually. She gets 1 extra attack, and this is a big deal because it means she can block things like fearsome units, which, like, the jump from 2 to 3 attack is always such a big deal. It also means you trade into a lot more. In Anivia's case, it's not as big a deal because if you attack with Anivia, she deals the 1 to anything, but it definitely makes her a much better blocker. So this is a nice buff to Anivia. I'm not really a fan of the Anivia style decks anyway, but this change is a good change. Anivia was underplayed, not quite that good, so this is definitely a good change. Kindred has gone down to 4 cost and lost 1 health. I absolutely love this change. This is a great change. I think this is exactly what Kindred needed. Their effect is just not good enough to justify the 5 cost. But 4 cost is definitely really good. The one problem with Kindred is she is one of these sort of back row carry champions, and you need to be careful about buffing these champions too much because you end up in the situation where they sit at the back line and win the game, and I'm not really a fan of that sort of playstyle. It's just very sort of sit back, do nothing, just wait until you win basically. And Kindred can definitely end up in that sort of toxic sort of deck design, but I love that they saw this coming and decided to reduce the health by 1 as well. Because at 3 health, Kindred is a lot more interactable. You might need to run ways of potentially protecting Kindred. So we'll see. This is a nice buff to Kindred. Definitely doesn't hurt. I'm going to be trying out a ton of Kindred decks, so definitely subscribe if you want to see some of them. Maokai change. This change is just, it doesn't really matter. It's nice. It should have always been like that, really. It's a nice change. It's not going to make deep great. Darius change. Doesn't matter. Darius' biggest problem is getting silenced or stunned. Like, 1 extra health isn't going to make the difference. Scion is still just better than Darius in most situations anyway. Next up, Diana. Nightfall, give me challenger round. To Nightfall, or when you activate another Nightfall unit, give me challenger this round. This is really a big deal. It basically means you can consistently use Diana as a quick attack challenger. Quick attack challenger, really strong combo of keywords before she levels. You are going to get at least 1, maybe even 2 extra units killed with your Diana because of this. Not only that, you're pulling away potentially good blockers for your opponent, so you're going to be able to get more damage through in those early turns. This is a huge buff for Nightfall. Nightfall is on the verge of being really strong as well. It's probably just in that sort of not quite good enough category. I'm going to be playing a ton of Nightfall deck, and I reckon this buff is a huge buff to Diana here. Xerath got 1 extra health. Honestly, I don't really think he needed it that badly. Yeah, it's nice. He's in that sort of range where he can't be killed. It's not a big difference. Like, Xerath, for the most part, you were fairly safe. Like, your opponent wasn't really that committed to killing your Xerath. Having 1 extra health helps a little bit. I can't see this making a big difference. Slight buff to Xerath deck. Like, any sort of buff is always going to be a slight buff, and it will help you win that odd game. But this is not going to make you win a lot more games, I don't think, Xerath. The big problem with these types of decks is just that we're too slow and they get swarmed. And this doesn't really help that game plan. I guess you could block with Xerath more often now. So maybe that will help. We'll have to see. I don't think this is a big change, but still a nice change and a good one to see. And his level 3 got changed. Ability now triggers on destroying a landmark and targets enemy units before targeting the Nexus. So that's good because it used to just trigger on end round once you ascended him, which just made no sense. Like sometimes it actually hindered you, the fact that it was round end only. So this is a great change. Okay, and that's all the champions. That was quite a lot of changes. Okay, next up we have a lot of Bandle City cards from the looks of it. Multi-region low units cost 1 less. The first multi-region unit you play each round costs 1 less. Good change, solid change. Bandle City Mare still a great card, just not quite as strong. It's great. Curious Shellfolk, this card was ridiculously strong. It was like sleeper for quite a while, and then it turned out just to be a real powerhouse of card. Lowering the health by 2. I would have loved to see the attack lowered by 1 to make it more easily targeted with various removal things like Cullen Strike and that new Bandle City recall card. But this is still a good change. It gets hit by a lot more removal. Like, you only need to bank 4 mana if you're playing as something like PNZ for a Thermo Beam to kill Curious Shellfolk. So that is great. It's no longer as big a threat. And they haven't completely killed the card. I do still question whether this will still be a bit too strong. Another thing, regions like Demacia, and Demacia is a big winner of this patch. Like, Demacia Dragons and Pantheon Demacia is a big winner of this patch. They can much more easily deal with Curious Shellfolk. Granted, though, that this Curious Shellfolk decks were quite good against them anyway because the cards like Minimorph. But it definitely sways the matchup more towards the Pantheon Demacia side. So Pantheon Demacia, definitely a big winner of this patch. Great change to Lectrin Yordle. Oh, wow. This is such a huge improvement. This card was just way too strong. I like the change. I like that they didn't change the stat line. I think the stats to be able to use it as a more control style card is important. I think it really sucked when it started getting used in a lot of aggro decks, that's where it felt like really ridiculous. Monster Harpoon. Deal 5 to a unit. Plunder costs 3 less. Now costs 2 less, so it costs 4 mana if you plunder. I'm actually not a fan of this change. I think Monster Harpoon was one of the great removal cards in this game, and it's a bit sad to see it nerfed. I don't think it was too strong. I thought it was a very fair card. This is probably the only change in this patch which I just straight up disagree with. Some of them I don't think are impactful, but I still agree with the change. This is the only one. I don't like this change. This is to target Sejuani Gangplank, but it also hits so many sort of fun Bilgewater decks where you use Monster Harpoon as a control tool to do your fun game plan. So I just don't like this change. Monster Harpoon was a fair card. I'm just not a fan of this change, but whatever. Right or allowed 1 miss. Next up, we have It That Stares. Play, obliterate all landmarks or deal 2 to other units. Now to deal 3 to all other units. Change doesn't actually matter, to be honest. It's a minor buff to peak decks, but it's still not getting played outside that archetype, so not really a big difference. And it's the same with this change. I'm just going to brush over it quite quickly, not a big change. This is the biggest change of this patch, in my opinion. Iceborne Legacy, from slow speed to burst speed. They just skipped out the fast and just went straight for burst. It's freaking nuts. This card is freaking nuts. Even at slow speed, there are some decks which were verging on strong using this card. The ability you can have with this card now is just absolutely insane. There's so many deck building opportunities. This is another card. This and Kindred are the 2 cards I'm most excited to experiment with in the new patch. I don't really have any good sort of decks for them at the moment because these patch notes have just come out. I haven't had a chance to theorycraft any decks, so unfortunately I can't show you any good decks for them, but I definitely will be experimenting with these on my channel. Rhyme Toss Shaman. 3/3/3/4. It's 5 mana. I don't think this really makes a big difference. I can't see this making a big difference. When I'm summoned, if you behold a horde, great change. Just makes it a bit more consistent. Again, not a big buff, but it's a good change. Okay, Chump Wump 4/3 to 4/4. Absolutely insane change. Big buff to Teemo decks. I'm a big fan of Teemo, if you didn't know, and this is a huge buff to Teemo decks, being able to use him as a decent blocker. He will regularly be blocking at least 2 units now. That is huge. That's a great buff for Chump. I think it did used to be a 4/4 actually, and it got nerfed. Yeah, so they've rebuffed it to a 4/4. That's a great change for Teemo decks. Ruined Rex. Effect can now trigger up to 6 times, increase from 5. Okay. How often are you drawing 6 cards in a turn? What are you playing to draw 6 cards in a turn? I'm going to try and make something with this, but I don't think this is really going to change. the card is just, it's so hard to trigger this a lot. Like, yeah, I guess it's okay. Base stats of coral creatures 1, 2, 3. Doesn't really matter. Like, one attack units are just not good. It makes it a good anti-aggro card. Like, 1/3 is very, very good into a lot of aggro matchups. So maybe it can be a good card if we're in a very aggressive meta. The current meta we're in, I don't think this is much of a big difference. But again, it was an underplay card, so don't disagree with the buff at all. At 2/2, would it be too strong at 2/2? I don't know. Maybe 2/2 would have been better than 1/3. Extended Rides cost 7, 2, 6. Card is still absolutely unplayable. Like, this is, you play this in Mono Shurima, you have 2 champions on the board. You play this and you hope to instantly ascend the Sun Disc. It's just not happening like 95% of the time. And the 5% of the time it does happen, you're just against an even memeier deck than yours. Like, usually your opponent will have some way to kill one of your champions, either a way to deny this. There's just so many ways to stop this. Karina Varaza 6688 literally doesn't matter. If you're playing a Karina deck and you've managed to get to turn 9 and play Karina, at 6/6 she's probably winning you the game anyway. At 8/8 she's definitely winning you the game anyway. Like, it's not a big difference. Back early Barkeep can now create cards outside of your deck's regions. I'm not even sure if that's a buff. Like, they've just gone, you know what, this is a complete meme card. Let's full on make this card as stupid as possible. I love it, but I can't see this being a big change. And it's 4 mana for a 3/3. It's not great. But I might experiment with this. Like, it could be fun. This change, absolutely love this change. Huge buff to Mono Shurima. Huge buff. Like, being able to actually play a 1-drop is huge. Like, Mono Shurima just struggles so much against aggressive decks. So being able to play a 1-drop is such a big deal. Like, this automatically summoning, great change for Mono Shurima. Vengeance costs 7 to 6. This is the change I wanted to see. So this was their attempt to put Vengeance on a similar level to Minimorph. And I love this change. Minimorph, I love as a removal. I know it's a very polarizing card. Some people think it's just stupid because it's uninteractable. My argument to that is it beats uninteractable decks. So people who hate Minimorph have a taste of your own medicine. And putting Vengeance 6 mana brings Vengeance closer to that. Obviously, Vengeance is a bit more healthy, I guess, because it's fast speed and people can stop it. But I do like Minimorph, and to be fair, Minimorph is still probably the better card against those decks which have a very narrow win condition and rely on one card as their win condition. But Vengeance is a much more better card in a variety of different matchups. So they're on a similar level now. Golden Crushbot now tech. Doesn't matter. Hidden Pathways cost 5 to 6. So if you create 2+ cards, it costs 4. Wow, that's really bad. Like that honestly is a really bad card now, in my opinion. I just think this is cut in all Bandle City decks now, and I think this change actually in itself might hit Bandle City decks harder than a lot of the changes we've seen before. Like don't get me wrong, these other changes we've seen before are a big deal, like Lectrin Yordle, Curious Shellfolk, Bandle City Mayor, but this is just insane. Like even if you create 2+ cards, you're paying 4 mana for 2 cards. You're paying 1 mana for a card. A lot of other card draw in the game is 3 mana for 2 cards. So they've basically said, you know what, Bandle City have too much card generation. They don't need the card draw on top of it, and they've nerfed this to unplayable tier. Don't disagree with the nerf, but the card is really bad unless we end up in a really slow meta. That's the only situation this will see use, is if we end up in a really slow meta. And apart from that, we just get some nice skins. So what the frick is this?